Back in the mid-2010s, the Adelaide Hills wine region was concerned about heatwave management. What we did was to have a project in which we put in probes in 2 sites, one at Lenswood and one at Macclesfield. They all behave in fairly similar fashions, but of course they have different environmental situations, providing growers with a visual indication and data that shows what variability there is across the region, and to help them to realise that guesswork's probably not enough. For example, Shiraz is telling you that it's suffering, so you can respond to that and give it water, but the Cabernet's not telling you. The problem is that, particularly during the critical later stages of ripening, you're not getting the opportunity to develop those flavours, which is what we're all about.
In 2015 we were involved with the Heatwave project through the Adelaide Hills wine region, to which we put a soil probe in at Springdale on one of the Sauvignon Blanc blocks. Initially we weren't entirely sure the benefits of the probes, but after the first year we were able to see some change. We started off with the one probe. We were a little bit sceptical given that it only represents one zone. So we sort of thought to ourselves, well, it's only really relevant to one block. And we were concerned, though they were quite expensive at the time. And apart from just moisture itself, we weren't quite sure what sort of benefits or savings we were going to make.
What we're finding is there's very different behaviours between the different soil types, which is no surprise. We've just upgraded our weather stations to a green brain unit, which allows us to actually look at data in real time as well as historically. So you can look for specific events that have occurred, not just rainfall, but perhaps an irrigation that you've put in, knowing the detail of that amount of irrigation and seeing how much that moisture goes down into the soil profile. It's giving you more information about how the vines are responding.
We were looking for ways to mitigate that heat on the soil surface, and one of those things was growing large mid-row crops similar to hay crops and allowing the grasses to toughen up, to which we were then putting straight under vine. And we were basically trying to mitigate the heat wave, but in turn over the 3 or 4 years of collecting the data with the new probes, we were able to see a massive change in the water holding capacity, the water infiltration rate, and a whole myriad of things which we didn't realise at the time that we were achieving as such. So it was really nice to have that collective data to support what we thought was visually happening. From a farmer's perspective, it's very hard to see what's happening in the soil. The probes are the first step, essentially, moisture, temperature, and picking up subtle changes. And I think in this situation, we're able to pick up rather large changes in water holding capacity. As an example, there's one block there where we've actually picked up a total of 10% extra water holding capacity, which is, when you start doing the figures, is a very large number. The other massive saving that we've made has been from not having to go around and physically measure or operate the equipment to measure the moisture. It used to consume a lot of time, particularly leading into heat waves. It's pretty much the last thing you want to be doing. So it's nice to have that data there. It's a massive cost saving for us. And literally, when we don't have the probes now, I really get sort of quite concerned and a little bit ruffled because I don't know what's quite going on. For us, there's other savings, not just the labour. The labour is obviously important nowadays, but now we're able to save money on pumping costs because we're not pumping unnecessary water, and we're also able to save on power. We're now looking more and feeling more comfortable about watering during the day, because I think solar is in a way sustainable, but water used in that fashion isn't necessarily going to be sustainable. So for us to have the moisture readings showing that the moisture is not drying up, showing that the heat's not having any effect, is really able to give us security in producing top quality fruit. One of the other added benefits is we're being able to track the moisture it's very hard as a farmer to be able to look at the crop and know exactly how much moisture is in the ground. So you're pretty much looking at visual symptoms. Now with the adopted change and the monitoring of the style and the procedure that we're doing with the mulches, we've noticed the water we're saving. We're now using 3-hour waterings and we're getting larger amounts of water holding in the soil, and we're making a real saving on the amount of water we're putting on the ground, the power we're using, and the list goes on.
This is a EnviroPro unit. You've got meters every 10 centimetres, and those meters are measuring soil moisture as well as temperature, and they can measure salinity. So in this particular probe that we're looking at, we've got 120 centimetre length, so there's 12 points, and that's giving constant data right through. And the greenbane data is allowing us to interpret that historically by looking back with variable time frames, so that you actually see what has happened on a particular day and the response that soil moisture and temperature have done. So as you can see here, we've got a cutaway of the soil moisture probe, and you can actually see the electronics, and each point is giving us information. In this example, we're looking at rain penetration at Bauhanna, and if you look at the graph here, you can see that we've actually had rainfall events right through the month. This is November. We can actually see that there's rain that's got through down to 40 centimetres at Bauhanna. You can also see below this depth, 40 centimetres, you can see that the soil moisture is gradually declining as soil moisture is used at this site. In contrast, if we look at the Forreston station, we can see that the same level of rainfall has actually penetrated down to 70 centimetres, and you've got a very steady soil moisture at depth. So what this is telling us is the different soil types that we're looking at here. So one of the questions we need to ask is, where are the roots? And in this diagram, what we're showing is a layer cake of soil types, just as an indication of the variability of soils that we see. And what we've done is to just include an image of the probe next to it, just to give you an indication of what variability we might be looking at. In this image, we've got a soil type triangle, which is contrasting percent sand against percent silt against percent clay. Sand obviously doesn't hold moisture well, clay holds it too well, and silt somewhere in between. And what this diagram is showing is that variability in soil types and combinations of that silt, clay and sand. The next image now is looking at moisture penetration using exactly the same soil type triangle. And what that's showing is just how rapidly moisture is moving through the sand types, is being held by the clay soil types, and is variable with the percentage silt. Now we don't know, unless we've done a soil pit, what soil types we're going to meet where we put the probes. So what needs to happen is that you put the probe in, see how it responds, and then start to interpret it. And I just want to talk about a few of the other opportunities that sit there. So obviously we've got soil type and water holding capacity understanding, looking at watering efficiency, looking at how we're managing temperature in heat waves, quantifying the benefits of mulching, and of course there are other management choices that this can help a lot with. An example is deficit irrigation for quality control for vineyards, about post-flowering irrigation, where that moisture is getting to, post-harvest irrigation, and other fine-tuning, and particularly ripening.
We started off with the one probe, which was roughly about $2,000. Now, in fullness of time, 6 years down the track, we have 7, and we've zoned them throughout the 2 vineyards, and they are very representative of the whole vineyard. So we've now got 7. I'd love a few more, but yeah, I think it's working very well, and I envisage we probably will be investing in a couple more in the next year or 2 with a good season. As a farmer, we take it very seriously, and I think sleeping at night's important, and I think it's nice to be able to give yourself security knowing that your grapes have got ample water leading into a heat wave, and literally just taking the pressure off that department, which is irrigation. I mean, this time of year you're concerned about fungicides, wire lifting, the list goes on. So being able to have those is basically taking a lot of pressure off me, and I can cover more bases as a farmer, an owner, a manager.
So the future with these soil moisture probes and this particular projects, We urge growers to read Crop Watch, where we'll have reports on a monthly basis of what's happening in the soils. We'd encourage growers to look at the Adelaide Hills Wine Region website to look at the weather station soil moisture data. They can look at that at real time as well as historical data. And if you're inspired, we encourage you to get a couple of probes. As you heard from Ben, one is not enough. It gives you an indication, it teases you. Get a couple of probes and get working with them. And then in the longer run, for benefit for the whole of the region, perhaps think about linking your probe to the broader weather station network so that we can all benefit from understanding what's happening with soil moisture and temperature.